I'd spent some time in corporations, top corporations, some of the best companies of the country. And I knew it was not merely a job, it was a lifestyle. It was not even a lifestyle, it was a mental state. It was not even a mental state, it was an enforced destiny. And I was just not prepared to accept that destiny. The purpose of life is not merely pleasure, and that too cheap kind of pleasure. Especially when your desires are all coming from your conditioning. Your desires are not even your own. What kind of career are you talking of? This institution of marriage that irreversibly puts a man and a woman together with social sanction was totally unacceptable to me. My own batch name mate for seniors or juniors from both IIT and IIM, they are keenly, heartfully interested in what I do. And they are interested since 20 years. Will they come and join my mission? No, they won't. They won't. Because their paymasters are continuously bidding very high. And they all are available to be auctioned. I have had instances where husbands or wives have actually come here and dragged their spouse away from this work. Why? If you wanted to do this, why did you marry me? As if this is some kind of underground mafia organization. I have not won the battle, but I am fighting. And because I am fighting, I have a story to tell. But it would not be an exaggeration to say that I'm using my own lifeblood as the ink.
Acharya ji, you had everything early in your life, and the stakes for you were already quite high at the age of 25. How did it feel to steer away from the mainstream corporate life and swim against the stream?
Leaving the mainstream corporate or bureaucratic life, that was not that big a problem or challenge. Because I had been in that setup at the time of my education and then also as a professional. And so I knew for sure that I don't belong there. I had to leave. In fact, had I not needed to repay my loans, settle my debts, education loans and a few other things, I wouldn't have even worked in the corporate sector, not even for the 3 years that I spent there. So, about this thing, I was very clear and very determined, rather stubborn about it, that once you know something, you should not try to unknow it. Once you see something, you should not try to unsee it. So I'd seen the direction in which mainstream education wants to push you, especially if you come from elite institutions like IIT and IIM. And, the track is very clearly and very inexorably laid out for you. I completed my BTech in 99 from IIT Delhi and my MBA in 2003 from IIM Ahmedabad. In between there was a period of 2 years when I prepared and qualified UPSC. So all in all, it was a period of 8 years when I was in the middle of that environment. So I knew what it stood for. It stood for gaining knowledge for the sake of money, or gaining power for the sake of personal aggrandizement. That was not something I could bring myself to accept. I uh, it was never my objective to be an engineer or a manager just so that I could earn more and keep consuming more. I didn't know much. I was not clear which direction to take, but I knew for sure that the conventional direction is certainly not worth choosing. I cannot become a corporate slave, full stop. And I'd spent some time in corporations, top corporations, some of the best companies of the country, including two MNCs. Short stints, not very long, a few months, 1 year, that kind of time. Even after my BTech, for a while, I had worked in the software sector. So I knew what's cooking. I knew the aspirations of the people there. And I knew it was not merely a job, it was a lifestyle. It was not even a lifestyle, it was a mental state. It was not even a mental state, it was an enforced destiny. And I was just not prepared to accept that destiny. I was a keen reader, a rather voracious one since my childhood. And this much I had learnt, even with all my incapacity and limitations and inexperience. But this much was clear to me, that the purpose of life is not merely pleasure, and that too cheap kind of pleasure. I looked down upon all these things because I was fortunate enough to get the company of greats via their words, their books. So, if we talk of the greatest 200 persons who ever lived on our planet, I think I would have made acquaintance with them before I was 15 years of age. Maybe a few odd ones I didn't know of, but mostly I was aware of the ones who mattered and had fallen in love with them. It was the deepest kind of respect one could have. And those people, those personalities came from all walks of life. They came from science, they came from sports, they came from philosophy, several disciplines of academics, literature, obviously literature. I was so fond of poems and short stories and even novels and novellas. So, those who went on to conquer heights, those who led expeditions, I would look at them and marvel at them. And I would say, this is the kind of life one ought to live. Be it the scientist struggling alone in his laboratory and not necessarily coming up with something humongous, but the dignity of that struggle. Or be it the mountain climber, who does not necessarily conquer the top, but keeps trying, sometimes to even perish in the attempt. That's what appealed to me. Appeal is a very light word. I've said, I just fell in love. I said, this is how one ought to live. One is not born to just earn fat money and get married and have babies and then take care of babies all his life and willingly confine himself to the several kinds of boundaries and limitations. I said, that's not what we are born for. And philosophy and spirituality, they told me that liberation is the highest value. And something in me simply resonated. I didn't even have to try to understand what they were saying. They said that, and I said, no, I'm not hearing it for the first time. It is a reverberation. It is an echo of something that I'm already saying. These books are coming to me not so much as teachers, but as proofs. They are validating what my inner truth is already standing for. By no means am I saying that I was not learning from what I was reading. But I mean to say that I took to the words of the highest people like a thirsty bird takes to water. I was already in search of what they were saying. And I could see a commonness. I could see a single common thread running through the words and deeds of great people across continents, across centuries, across fields and disciplines, across religions and ideologies. I could say it does not matter whether this fellow is a 5th century BC Greek philosopher or a 12th century Indian mathematician or a 21st century European scientist. If I look at their lives and their deeds and their words, they are all actually saying and living much the same thing. Obviously, there are diversities, differences. But beneath and beyond the diversities, I could see only a commonality. It was later I would realize that the name I would give to that commonality is Advait. And love again. I fell in love with that word, Advait. So the name of my first venture was Advait Life Education. And when the foundation was founded, we called it not merely Prashant Foundation or Acharya Prashant Foundation. We said, name it Prashant Advait Foundation. We could as well say Advait Foundation and that would be great. But then there is the point of recall. People won't be able to recall and associate easily. So we said Prashant Advait Foundation. So that's how it was happening. And therefore it was not very difficult to leave the life you have talked of. I had very little respect or consideration for what my peers, my batchmates and other people considered very valuable and lofty and important and coveted those things. Stuff that other people coveted, I was actually contemptuous of. And I'm not saying that with the purpose of self-promotion or anything. I'm saying that as a matter of fact. With all humility, I'm putting that. And I just hope that I'll be honest enough to put my fragilities and failings with the same kind of candidness as I'm able to put things that show me in better light. So there were placements and there was money and there was career progress and such things. And I would see people drooling and salivating. And it used to give me, it used to be a thing of fun to disregard and actually display your contempt for all those things. So when I was having my interviews in the campus, I'm talking of the IIM campus, the content of those interviews is some kind of stuff of, you could say, folklore or legend or whatever. I mean, these are big words, they should not be used, but for want of a more suitable word, among my batchmates. So when the usual candidate walks in and sits in front of the panel, he's a bit nervous. too reverential, diffident, and I would enter, sometimes purposefully, with a swag. Huh? Not always purposefully, but it used to be there. I couldn't help it. And I would look at that HR panel. And what could I do? It evoked no respect at all. I would look at them and corporate mercenaries, hired slaves. So that lady in one of the interviews, I used to get a lot of interview calls because my CV was very strong. So there used to be a thing called day zero shortlist. And I would get like 5 or 10 day zero shortlists. Shortlists mean this particular student has been shortlisted for interview based on just the CV. So they would look at my CV and say, wow, and they would want to meet me without knowing what lies in store. So I would walk in and this lady once asked me, she says, convince me that you will be with us 1 year down the line. Ma'am, will you be there 1 year later to check this thing out? I mean, what kind of question is this? And equally, I remember there was one lateral interview. It was either HLL or PNG. These were two big names when it came to lateral placement. And I was having my rehearsals. We were staging Pagla Ghoda. It's a Badal Sarkar play. So, and in that play, I was directing that play and I was playing a drunkard sitting next to the pyre of his beloved. The lady has just died and he is sitting there at the crematorium and he's saying a few things and playing cards, and towards the end he tries to end his own life. I modified the ending actually. So I was in the middle of rehearsals and I forgot that I have an interview. And it was a dress rehearsal. So I was dressed up like a drunkard. Clothes torn and hair all disheveled. So somebody comes and says, whether the panel is waiting for you there. And it was 7 p.m. So I went there in the same getup. I said, I don't have time to change. I don't even intend to change. So I'll sit like that. So I entered there. And it was such a soulful, such a heartful conversation I had with that panel. A long conversation. And they ended it just because they had the last flight to catch. They wanted to return to Delhi. So it was an 11 o'clock flight or something. The interview started at 7. And they said, of course you would have understood that this job is not for you. And it was one of the most valued jobs in the campus. Lateral placement means you would be hired at a level higher than the usual entry level, the fresher level. So they said, I think it's very clear that this job is not for a person like you. So I said, obviously, that is very clear right from the first moment. And that interview would have stretched for some 2 hours or something. The typical interview is 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. So they knew they were not to make me an offer. And I knew for sure I was not to accept that offer. And still we kept chatting. And I was in that special dress. Said, this job is not for you. I said, may I say one thing? What? Even you should not be in this job. It's obvious that I should not be in this job that you have brought to the campus. Even you should not be in this job. Why are you wasting your time? So I'm not sure whether I expressed it so very clearly and at such length. But that was the content of the entire discussion, 2 hours. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? You are selling diapers. You are selling washing powder. When you were 15 years of age or 20 years of age, Had someone told you that you would spend your life selling washing powder, would you have taken the deal? And they were silent. They said, no. I said, then why are you doing it right now? Because selling washing powder fetches you a lot of money. I understand if you have a critical need for money, then you can take up this kind of job for a while. Even I remained in 3-4 jobs, each for a duration of a few months or 1 year maximum, because I needed that money to settle my debt. So if you have that kind of a pressing requirement of money, then I understand that you can take up this job for a short duration. But now I see that you are 40 or 50 years of age and you are continuing here and you are kind of building a career in this. What kind of career are you talking of? And you have just grown accustomed to this life. If you can detach yourself for a while, you will be rather disgusted. Detachment will bring disgust. You will be offended at what you have brought yourself to. Okay? So that's how I was looking at the entire corporate sphere and the mainstream life. Professional life, I didn't want to be a corporate junkie. Personal life, I didn't want to be the typical husband. This institution of marriage that irreversibly puts a man and a woman together with social sanction was totally unacceptable to me. Being with someone is a very intimate, very personal, very atmic thing. Something that has to do with the core of your individuality. And I just couldn't allow it to become a social institution, something that required legal sanction. So I was out of it. Now, being out of it is okay, but what to do next? Personally, you don't want to live the life that everybody does. Professionally, you don't want to do the work that everybody does. What do you do now? So then there was this long period of estrangement and wilderness. And I just didn't know. So I said, I don't know things in completeness, but I think I know enough to at least reject what is so disgusting. And why don't I share the little that I know? And why don't I begin to share this with those who are in the same condition as I am? So I designed a course, and that was just after I passed out from IIM. The course was PLTL, Perspectives in Leadership Through Literature. So because I had a background in literature, so I could pick up pieces from literature that pointed towards decision making, wise decision making, and leadership, and showing light to people. Stuff that could be admissible in an MBA campus. So I put that course together and floated it in some of the best MBA campuses in the country. 2 or 3 of them, 4 of them actually. And I would go there, I would meet MBA students, and those students would often be my own age. Once I was teaching an executive management class. It was one of the first assignments I had. And I used to take up these assignments on my weekends because the entire week I was busy in my corporate job. So I was teaching this executive management class, and the youngest student in that class was 4 years elder to me. I was 25, and the average age there was 30 plus. And the youngest one was 28, 29 something. We even had 38, 40, 42-year participants there. So I was very happy doing that. I was able to just bare my heart to them. I would say, see, the two of us are on the same boat. I have not won the battle, but I'm fighting. And because I am fighting, I have a story to tell. I have real and rich experiences to share with you because I'm fighting a real battle. So I was not sermonizing, I was not preaching, I was not even teaching. I was just sharing. I was sharing by way of the stories, the classics, the poems, the experts from top essays and novels that I would bring to them. I would say, you look at this. And this tells you something very important about life. So this was what was happening. I didn't know much. I knew only little. Theoretically, I knew a lot. But I make it a point to call knowledge as mine only when I start living it. If I'm not living something, I think it is dishonest to call it as knowledge. Knowledge must become life. Knowing must become being. So I knew only a little. I was living only a little because early days. And I was sharing it with people, and that's what I'm still doing. I'm still in the thick of battle and conflict. I'm still in the middle of journey. And what I speak about, what I tell my friends, my students, my audiences, is the story that I have actually experienced. I might be quoting from books, but I'm speaking from life. Oh. I might be writing on paper, but it would not be an exaggeration to say that I'm using my own lifeblood as the ink.
Acharya ji, is there anything at all that you miss about the mainstream corporate or bureaucratic life you once had?
Competence. And it's so unfortunate, you see. I left that life because it was directed towards the wrong destination. People were working for the wrong purposes. And I'm very clear here, very judgmental. Wrong. You're not supposed to toil 10 hours a day just so that you can fulfill your desires. That's not what life is for. Especially when your desires are all coming from your conditioning. Your desires are not even your own. Your desires are just implants, imported stuff. So the society has conditioned you to want something. I'm conditioned to want something. And then I keep working to fulfill those wants. That's not what I can call as life. That cannot be the rightful purpose of life. So I left that place because they didn't have a purpose, a proper purpose. But they had competence. They had the best brains there. If I look at my batch at IIT Delhi, such a tremendous pool of raw and rich talent. Much the same I can say for my IIM batch as well. And I spent only a few days, just a few weeks actually, with my UPSC batchmates at the time of training. But they too were very talented, very qualified, very driven people. But all that was unacceptable to me because all that talent was being put to the service of the wrong master. And it's so ironical. The area where the sole purpose is pleasure and greed and consumption, that area has such abundance of talent and competence. And the area I am in, I dare say it's a higher field. We are working for a higher purpose. But I don't find competence here. I don't even find that level of enthusiasm and drive here. And it's also strange, you see, those who are working so that their personal lives uh, can be more decorated and lavish. They have the inspiration, they have the competence, the talent, the knowledge, the skill, everything. All the able people have gathered there. In the wrong side. And when it comes to the side that is standing for courage and honesty and freedom, what I don't see is competence. There you have all the motivation because there you have all the incentives. You work more, you'll get more money. Or if you can land an IAS job, you can have the girl or boy you want, along with all the dowry. So they are very motivated, very eager, raring to go. You visit MNC banks, particularly investment banks, and people willingly slog their 14 hours a day. And when it comes to the right battle, when it comes to the right camp, we don't see that kind of eagerness, enthusiasm. Rather, we see laziness, indifference, demotivation. To some extent, that is prakritic, natural. Because the mind wants gratification. When you are working for your paymasters, gratification is guaranteed. Whereas the battle that I have picked up and the battle I have invited my people for, that battle offers no gratification. That battle only promises dissolution. All I promise my friends, my folks, my team is that you will get a nice closure. You will get a befitting ending. This place is the one where you can finally rest in peace. By that I mean, there you can finally be laid to rest. So you have come to meet your end here. Now there people are told you have come here to enjoy and have fun and frolic and have money and sex and prestige and pleasure. That's the incentive offered there. And here, what incentive can I offer? Neither do I have a lot of money to offer my team or my audiences, nor can I offer them a so-called golden future. So that's what I miss. Competence and enthusiasm, eagerness, liveliness. The society, is such that if you are talented, it immediately starts bidding for you. And it places very, very high bids that the talented ones cannot refuse. So many of my own mates or seniors or juniors from both IIT and IIM, they are keenly, heartfully interested in what I do. And they are interested since 20 years. Will they come and join my mission? No, they won't. They won't. Because their paymasters are continuously bidding very high. And they all are available to be auctioned. Yes? And the moment they think, okay, can we do something great and purposeful and rich in life? Somebody calls from behind. And usually the one who calls from behind is either your paymaster or your family. I have had instances where husbands or wives have actually come here and dragged their spouse away from this work. Why? If you wanted to do this, why did you marry me? As if this is some kind of underground mafia organization. We have committed ourselves to the highest ideal that humanity can envisage. And yet, people are afraid and indifferent, not merely reluctant, but actually in opposition. Right now, I struggle for both funds and talent. So, that's a pain point. That's one of the pain points. But still, the going is great, and I would not trade it for anything under the sun. I'm glad I opted for this, and my love for this has only been deepening each passing day.
What is growth according to Acharya Prashant?
Growth, I said, is a deepening. It's an inner depth, not an external accumulation. Can you become somebody else? Because you are not born healthy. Therefore, the purpose of life is to gain health, not remain the one you were born as or you currently are. That's real growth. So when you say I'm growing in life, it should mean that you are not the same person you used to be 2 years back. That each passing day you are learning. So growth then is learning. Growth then is about unlearning all the nonsense that our biology and society heaps upon us. Forget all that. There are the physical instincts and there is the social conditioning. Can you see how false they are, how foreign, how alien, how unnecessary they are? And can you have the courage to reject them? That's growth. I repeat, growth is not accumulation. Growth is not about having a bigger house. Growth is not about moving into a bigger bungalow or apartment or gaining promotions in your job. That's not growth. Even if you want to call it growth, it is the lowest kind of definition of growth. You are the one who experiences within, right? Even if you accumulate something outside. If you are asleep, does that accumulation mean anything? You are sleeping and I keep rupees 10 crore by your side. Does it mean anything to you? Those rupees mean anything only when you are awake, right? So, it is the inner one who counts, not the external money. All the external things that you do for the sake of the inner one. Money by itself means nothing if you are asleep, right? Money is for the sake of the inner one. Therefore, growth has to do with the inner one. Are you getting it? Money alone does not matter. If you are not conscious of money, if you are not there, of what use is money? So money is not for its own sake. Money is for your sake. So you are paramount. You are central. You are important. You are the hero of your life. You are the most important thing, the person, entity in your life. You are the most important one. So growth has to do with the most important one, the experiencer within. Can the experiencer become better? Can he learn? Can he attain depth? That's growth.
It is said that when you educate a woman, you educate an entire generation. नारी सशक्तिकरण पर ये पंक्तियां हमारे दिल को जोश और हिम्मत से भर देती हैं। ऐसी ही हिम्मत भरी कहानी अभी हमने सुनी जोश टॉक्स पर और हमें उससे काफ़ी प्रेरणा भी मिली। ऐसी ही कहानी है लक्ष्मी जी की, जिन्होंने CS करके बड़े शहर में वो आए जॉब का सपना लेके, पर उन्हें यहाँ जॉब नहीं मिल पाई। पर उन्होंने हिम्मत नहीं हारी, जोश के साथ उन्होंने कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स पर काम किया और आज एक बड़ी कंपनी में वो काम कर रही हैं। लक्ष्मी जी की ही तरह कई स्टूडेंट्स जैसे कि वैशाली जी, नीला, प्रणाली, आरती और उषा जी ने मिलके जोश स्किल्स के साथ विभिन्न स्किल्स जैसे कि स्पोकन इंग्लिश, कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स, पर्सनालिटी डेवलपमेंट, फाइनेंस, बिजनेस बिल्डिंग सीख कर आज अपनी अलग पहचान बनाई है। आज ही अपने जैसे लाखों स्टूडेंट के साथ भारत के नंबर 1 स्पोकन इंग्लिश लर्निंग ऐप जोश स्किल्स ऐप के साथ अपनी इंग्लिश लर्निंग जर्नी शुरू करें।